you've mentioned that you see like a 3-year window of ability to really, really kind of capitalize on this before everybody else.
It's the real estate cycle. And you go, well, what does this have to do with AI?
Like I can predict where somebody's business model will be in a year or two just based on the quality of questions they're asking today.
Network effect for mere mortals. I'm going to show you this is what Finn is actually doing.
This AI stuff, it's a fad, it's going to pass, and I'm just going to let it go by because I'm not going to worry about it. How do you respond to that business owner?
The internet is so ephemeral, like next year it'll be off to something else, and this was just practice for whatever comes next, and just seems like a hamster wheel.
All right, everybody, you guys are about to get your minds blown up today. Perry Marshall is one of those guys, by the way, that I invited on here. I've been listening to Perry for 20 years. He is an OG in our space. He's written multiple best-selling books, and part of the reason I wanted to bring him on, he's got an upcoming AI event, which I think you guys are going to be super interested in, and he's kind of leading the charge for monetization strategies and things like that. And I also brought on our man, Jonathan Mast, Mr. Whitebeard, the bearded AI wizard himself. Thank you guys for being here and doing this.
I love Jonathan's white beard. It confers incredible authority.
That's why we're all
Now we
Oh,
here.
just need
thank you, Perry.
big leather books in a satchel, and we'll be complete.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Frankie, thanks for inviting me to join. And Perry, great to be here. So thank you.
So Perry, like one of the things I've always loved about you is that you've been kind of like really ahead of the curve, not just once or twice, but you see a lot of the trends coming before. I mean, you were one of those Google ads when it was 5 cent guys telling everybody to get in on it. Obviously, you still know how to make it work now that it's $25.05 a click, but you were showing people like this is going to be a thing long before it was. You were way ahead of the curve on Facebook ads. So when Perry Marshall says you guys got to be paying attention to this AI stuff, I think you should listen. And Perry, one of the things you mentioned that I kind of wanted to start with is you've mentioned that you see like a 3-year window of ability to really, really kind of capitalize on this before everybody else. I wonder if you could just elaborate on that. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but would love to hear your insights and kind of perspective on this.
Well, there's a particular 3-year window that I've been calling people's attention to, and it's the real estate cycle. And you go, well, what does this have to do with AI? Well, it has to do with everything because the economy fundamentally runs on real estate. Everybody has to live somewhere, and there's 100 times more money invested in real estate than there is on the stock market. So everybody's always they're looking at the stock market and they're looking, what's the Dow Jones and all that. But uh, at the beginning of COVID, one of my clients, Damian Deegan, said, "Hey, Perry, I've been following these guys for a few years and they're always hitting it right. You need to pay attention." I got introduced to Patel and Philip Anderson, and they have this thing called the 18-year real estate cycle. And it's an observation that for the last 200 years, with the only exception being World War II, that real estate has been on a seesaw pattern that resets every 18 years. And it reset at the end of 2008. And then we had a big crash. And we're another 18 or 19 years after that in about 3 years. And the thing that really caught my attention was we're in COVID. We've been in it 2 months. The sky is falling. No, what is going on? Like, is the world coming to an end? And they said to me, is real estate cheap right now, or is real estate expensive? Is it easy to buy a house, or is it hard to buy a house right now? And the fact was, it was easy to buy a house. It was easy to get credit. And they go, exactly, we're in the middle of the real estate cycle. We're not at the end. And I'm not going to go into their model in detail other than just say there's always a dip in the middle. And COVID was that dip. And if you go back 18 or 19 years before, that was kind of equivalent to the dot-com crash. And so right now, like there's a lot of people that think, oh yeah, like there's about to be a crash, like the bubble's going to blow. The bubble can't blow when there's not enough real estate to go around. And there's not enough real estate to go around right now. Like ask anybody, like how hard is it to buy a house? Ask any like 25 or 30-year-old, have you had any difficulty like buying a piece of property? So we have to have a real estate bubble before it crashes. And I think we're heading into a real estate bubble. And it reminds me very much of where we were in about 2003 or 2004. We are a couple of years after the dot-com crash, just like we are a couple of years after COVID. And technology fueled a real estate boom. That's exactly what was happening in like 2005, 6, 7.
Right.
And that's going to happen again with AI in the natural pendulum swing of how the economy works. And so there's no way to be exact about this, but I think we're somewhere in the vicinity of still 3 years away from something cracking and breaking. And right now is the time to make hay while the sun shines. And that's probably hard for some people to hear because there's so much uncertainty and there's like 27 different wars going on in the world. And like, what's ChatGPT going to do? And what's Gemini going to do? And what's Claude going to do? And what's Midjourney going to do? And what's Sora going to do? And I'm just noticing how much this feels like 20 years ago. It's eerie. I'm curious if either of you guys relate to what I'm expressing.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like 2007 was when I got my start on making the magic internet money, and it kind of forced my hand a little bit in the sense that I couldn't go back on a job. So I was baptism by fire in my journey in entrepreneurship. And I definitely know what you mean with those cycles, those kind of, you just see them if you live long enough. It's funny too, because, I've said this to people like, not that I have it all figured out, but having done this 20 years, like I can predict where somebody's business model will be in a year or two just based on the quality of questions they're asking today. So I absolutely feel you like, yeah, I definitely get the shades of 2004 vibes. I don't know how you feel about that, Jonathan.
No, I totally agree with you, Perry. I think that, everything in life is cyclical, and that's a great analogy that you play out. And I think when it all makes sense. I mean, everything you're talking about, it's very logical, and that fits in and happens to fit in with my worldview as well, which is always helpful. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, I see tons of parallels back to that time.
Yeah. I wonder if we could go a little bit into the things that I think that probably our audience would be the most interested, Perry, is you are just like leading the charge on monetizing AI long before everybody else. Like, you've got people that have like entire business models built on, actually being able to build real businesses around AI. I know it's a cool trick. I know you can write content, and I know there's lots of cool, little parlor tricks you can do with people, but you guys are, actually building real businesses around that. I wonder if you could share some insights into like, what that looks like and how you guys have sort of figured those things out.
What I want to start by saying is, unless you have billions and billions of dollars, it's almost never about the technology. It's about the customer experience. I was talking to one of my AI speakers yesterday. He's only 30 years old, and I've known him since he was probably 16 because his dad was bringing him to roundtable members. And David said, it's never about the technology. It's always about how do I'm not investing in technology, I'm investing in a better customer experience. So, for example, we had an AI seminar last May. It was 10 and a half months ago. And one of the people that came from Australia was Finn Peacock, and he owns solarquotes.com.au. So Solar Quotes Australia, they connect solar power installers to people that need solar power, and they've been doing it for 15 years. And he said, We are in the process of taking all of our knowledge base and turning it into a chatbot. Well, now he has a chatbot. You can go to solarquotes.com.au and you can play with it. And what they do with it is when they get customer support tickets, the chatbot sends the customer support person an answer into a holding queue, and the person reads that and they go, do I want to say this to the customer or not? And they either send it along or put it in the revise pile because maybe there's something wrong with it. And it cuts their customer service by about 30%. And it also makes the customer service job more interesting because the repetitive questions are much less of a burden. And now the person's just managing a bot. And there is so this appears to be just a bell or a whistle or a convenience, but I see it's much, much more than that. Now, before I explain why it's more than that, I want to emphasize that they implemented a particular technology on a particular server with particular developers, and they borrowed certain things from other companies and so on. And that's not so much the important part. The important part is that they're making a better customer experience faster and easier. And they could switch horses next week. They could change the technology. They could run it on a different chatbot or whatever. And that's sort of immaterial. I think 99.8% of people that are listening to us are not going to go up against Microsoft or start the next AI company that's going to become the next Facebook. God bless you if you do, but I don't think most people listening to us are going to do that. But here's what, let me draw something on my little board here. So in Silicon Valley, we have this term network effect. And what network effect is, it's when Uber gets riders, which attracts drivers, which creates speed, which attracts riders, which attracts drivers, which creates speed. And this is why you would be insane to go try to start another Uber at this point in history. Uber and Lyft have that locked down. Everybody's got the app. The drivers are already driving around. You can get a ride in 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and they have this locked up. And your mission, should you choose to accept it as an entrepreneur, is to put in place network effect. And I have a term, NEMM, network effect for mere mortals. So like Uber is network effect for Silicon Valley billionaires. And that's what eBay is, and that's what Facebook is, and that's what all the Airbnb and all those guys. And they call them unicorns for a reason. Network effect for mere mortals, I'm going to show you this is what Finn is actually doing. And it's not obvious on the surface. So let me give you a different network effect for mere mortals, and then I'll illustrate. So I've got another client, Mark McShirley, and he owns a company called Roof Simple. And Mark started a roofing company in Washington, D.C. about 8 or 9 years ago. And he was disgusted with the experience that most people have when they buy a roof. The roofing industry is really dysfunctional, and roofing salesmen half of them are snorting cocaine. And
true story. True story, by the way.
Very unhappy with the whole thing. And so he built a different kind of company with a different kind of culture and a different approach. And the bottom line was, when they finished a roofing job, it was not difficult at all for them to get a person to sign into the Google account, give them a 5-star Google review. And this created what Mark coined a term, I'd never heard it before. He called it review velocity. And by the time they had 200 5-star Google reviews in the DC area, and they're coming in at like 5 reviews a week. Mark's like, we have a review velocity of 5 a week. And at this point, it's cheaper for him to advertise, easier for him to get a customer than almost any other company that does roofs in the DC area. And review velocity is network effect for mere mortals, because review attracts customers, which attracts reviews, which attracts customers.
Yeah.
So if they keep their quality control up, like they are on a magic carpet ride. Well, the first day that they opened in Houston, they had 200 Google reviews. So that's network effect for mere mortals. It's even in a roofing company, it's like a brick and mortar old school thing, but they have this digital element, this digital feedback loop. Well, Finn Peacock is also now has this because he has taken his entire body of work. They've been in the solar power business for 15 years. They have a ton of expertise. They're a very conscientious company. They're not just a lead generator. They actually have guarantees to their customers, and they get involved in disputes, and they fire solar installation companies that don't meet their standards. So they're very actively involved in this. The first day he had his chatbot running, he was ahead of ChatGPT and Gemini and Google and Microsoft and everybody, because ChatGPT's information on solar power is averaged out of all the websites on the internet, which includes a lot of garbage, and Finn's is curated. ChatGPT is never going to fix this in solar power. I mean, think about it. Even a multi-billion-dollar company, how, without just hiring a whole bunch of really smart humans, how are they going to go curate what is good solar power, what is bad solar power information?
100%.
And every time they rinse repeat on this, every time a customer service person gets a response from the bot and they go, this one's a good one, this one's a bad one, put it in the fix pile. This is a good one, this is a bad one, put the bad one in the fix file, and then they fix their database and make it better. They are making this network effect for mere mortals feedback loop go even better and even faster. And I submit to you that most people who have a body of work that has been carefully curated over the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, however long your career's been, a lot of people have knowledge on your hard drive. It's mostly on your hard drive in your computer, and it's in your customer support people, it's your sales people, your
email,
install, whoever you got. This is the next race that most people don't realize we are in. And ChatGPT and Google are not going to be in this race any more than ChatGPT and Google are selling real estate. Like, notice Google did not manage to take over the real estate. They're not controlling the agents, and they're not doing the commissions. They make a lot of money on real estate, but the real estate industry owns real estate. This is the race that every leader in every little niche in every industry is now in, and most people don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's the 3-year window. I've heard you say on this that you are of the belief that as of today, that ChatGPT and all these kind of various AI tools are really only useful for marketers. And now I kind of see why you're saying that. I wonder if you could elaborate for folks why you see it as only really useful for marketers, and when you start to see, other than I guess maybe the high school kids, cheating on their homework, but when you start to see that as, kind of a mainstream tool, or if we'll ever even reach that point, or if it'll always be something in our world that every kind of marketer rants and raves about, and mere mortals, as you put it, may not be as interested in it.
Well, first, let's talk about what it actually does and doesn't do for marketers. So I think AI only does 3/4 of the job.
Yeah.
So what I would analogize to this, do you guys remember the term from the late 90s and early 2000s, the last mile?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The last mile was the phone line from you to your internet service provider, and the last mile was the warehouse, like delivering groceries from the warehouse to your house, or Amazon from the Amazon warehouse to your house. That was the last mile. Now, it was in contrast to the first 10,000 miles, which, internet message could go around the world 10 times on fiber optic cables, but it couldn't get to your house that fast. Or shipping stuff from Guangzhou to Indianapolis was super easy. It's just a shipping container and it's going to get there in 3 weeks, guaranteed. And that's easy. But getting it from Indianapolis to your doorstep is hard. This is exactly where AI is right now. Every time I get on a Zoom meeting and I say, if you're writing copy, AI does like, it gets you to 75%, rough draft to 75% done. And like, that's about it, right? And everybody's like, yes, yes. Like, I got to play with it. I got to mess. The last mile is going to be with us for the foreseeable future with AI. Now, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years from now, maybe AI will be sort of like it's 2007 or it's 2010 and everybody's got fiber optic cable in their house and everybody's got a fast internet connection and everybody's got 4G. Well, that took a while. And this, getting AI from first thing to final finished piece of copy, it's going to be a while before it's doing exactly what you want. And when it does, that becomes totally commoditized and effectively worthless.
Yeah.
So I say there's always going to be a last mile. About 10 years ago, I did a fairly now famous seminar with Richard Koch, who's now a billionaire. He's only worth 200 million back then. It was called the Star Seminar. And for 10 years, I had been teaching direct marketing and Google Ads and all of that stuff. And Richard's seminar was, what kind of companies make 10 million, 100 million, or $1 billion? And what kind of things what do they actually do for people? Well, it's always the company that's number one in a growing market. It's always you're number one in a growing market. There's never any exception to that. If you're not number one in a growing market, you ain't making $1 billion. It's not going to happen. And number two, they always make something radically simpler than it used to be. Like whether it's Apple or Microsoft or General Motors or any of those companies, when they like made their quantum leap, all of them did at the time was whatever the way you used to do something, they made it a lot simpler and a lot easier. And as soon as we did that seminar, I realized I'm in a new game now. For the last 10 years, if you knew direct marketing and you knew how to write a headline, you knew how to buy an ad, you understood a click-through rate, you understood what a conversion was, man, you've got a license to print money. Right, Frankie? I mean, when you
That's why
talk
I
about
started following you, my man. You were my license to print money.
well, what I suddenly realized was all of those direct marketing things, those are quickly becoming commodities. I think AI just puts the nail on the coffin. The fact that you can like take a Google Analytics spreadsheet or Facebook report, upload it to ChatGPT and start asking it questions. It's like, so which of these ads are working and what strategy is working? What kind of mess? And it actually gives you answers. It just means all that old Claude Hopkins direct marketing stuff has been thoroughly commoditized. That's what it means. And guess what? Figuring out your unique selling proposition, figuring out what market is growing, where do I want to be number one, what radical simplification do I introduce to the marketplace? That's where all the money is. And the AI is not going to answer that question for you. It will help. It will give you ideas. It will give you angles, but ultimately it's human ingenuity. And I think, I mean, we can have a whole philosophical discussion here. I think the world has way overhyped what AI actually is. But again, that's another conversation, depending on if you want to go down
Yeah,
that
let's
rabbit hole.
go there. I mean, I'm kind of with you in that I think it's a very valuable tool, but like, internet marketers in general get way too caught up in tools and not enough behind the big ideas behind them. Like last time we were talking about Google Ads and the importance of like offers and understanding who you're talking to and things like that, and that all of those kind of things are secondary. Everybody gets caught up in should I use Performance Max or not? And they miss the kind of really big kind of simple, stuff that hasn't changed in 1,000 years. So I'm with you personally that I think they're immensely valuable tools, but the idea that, the tool is the savior and not the person operating it that knows how to use the tool is a totally different game. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that for sure.
So I want to ask permission to just go completely
Rant
deep.
away, my man. Permission given.
Let's hear it.
All right. So there is a guy from the 1940s named Finkelstein, I think. He was a biologist, and he was doing research on, I think, salamanders or frogs. And so, two frogs get together, they have a baby, and they have a frog. Well, there's this thing they could do when it's at the earliest stage of an embryo. They can create this disturbance, and the cells of the embryo will double their DNA and their chromosomes. And so a regular frog has one set of DNA, but then you can get it to double up. And so, one cell is this big, and, two cells is this big. He could even get it to do 4 chromosomes of 4 sets of DNA, and the frogs would be made out of big cells instead of little cells. Well, what he found out was, this is my very poor rendition of a frog. It didn't matter whether
You got to work on your frogs, my man. That's more turtle.
Yeah, man, I'm going to art school starting on Monday. The 1X frogs, the frogs with 1X cells, the frogs with 2X cells, and the frogs with 4X cells all looked exactly the same. They were all the same size. There was just same size frog with 1/4 as many 4X size cells. Okay. And well, this is so interesting. So he got really detailed, and he found out there was a kidney, there was a tube that comes off the kidney, and it goes to some other organ, and the tube is 1 cell in diameter on the inside, tiny little tube. So he found out if he has 1X cells, the tube is made from 8 cells in an octagon pattern, and then stack them and make a tube like this. The 2X frogs, the tube was made out of 4 cells, and the inside was still the diameter of 1 cell. And in the 4X frogs, they took 1 cell and bent it into a C. And cells have a skeleton called a cytoskeleton. And the cytoskeleton was just bent into a C. In the middle of the C was still the diameter of 1 cell. And then they just stack the little C's on each other. Now, what does this tell you about biology? What it tells you is that frog tube from the kidney to the other thing is not built from a blueprint or an algorithm. It's not like a General Motors plant where they're stamping out fenders. It's telling you that tube is a live engineering problem that is solved in real time by the cells and tissues every time a frog embryo develops. Now, let's go closer to home. I have two adopted kids. My daughter, who's 13, was missing a fibula, which is one of the bones in your leg below your knee. And so she was born with half a small deformed foot and a shorter leg on one side. So, everybody's seen somebody with a deformed foot or deformed hand or whatever. Well, the skin is all the right length and the muscles are all the right length and the blood vessels are all the right length and the nerves are all the right length. I have a son who's 19. He has dwarfism. Everybody's seen people with dwarfism. All the proportions are correct. And their arms work and their legs work. It's not like the bones are short and then the skin is flopping around. Next time you look at any person with any physical deformity, I want you to notice the miracle of how perfectly their body engineered around the deformity. Most people never think about this.
Yeah.
This is how smart biology is. Biology is so smart that if the cells are 4 times as big as they're supposed to be, every single thing in the frog will be correctly proportioned. And the tube will be made with a string of C's instead of an octagon of little cells, because there's an instruction that says, hey guys, we need a tube that's 1 cell in diameter from A to B, go figure it out. And the cells and tissues figure it out. And nobody has to tell them. This is 1,000,000 trillion times more sophisticated than anything Silicon Valley has ever done. It takes more intelligence to digest your breakfast than all of the ingenuity that built Apple or Facebook. The press, the media, and frankly, most of the college professors in Silicon Valley are clueless about this. They have severely underestimated life and biology and everything. And so when people start giving you a narrative about how the AI bots are going to take over and it's going to be Terminator and it's going to wake up and all that, that is bullshit. Everything any of these AIs know how to do, somebody either directly or indirectly trained them to do it. Computers don't unemploy people. Computers employ people because computers need people to make them run.
Yeah.
That is so good. That is so good.
Yeah, can I just add, by the way, for those of you guys who don't know, Perry's got a whole other separate life where he's not just this evil genius direct marketer, but he's got stuff we kind of talked about where he shows, the fingerprints of creation are really in everything. And if you guys are so interested, and I'd recommend you guys check those out as well. Jonathan, it sounded like you had something else you wanted to say. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, on that context, Perry, like you said, everybody's talking about, oh my gosh, AI is going to take over the world. AI is going to take all our jobs. I don't believe that for a millisecond either.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious, how do you address that business owner, that individual, but particularly the business owner who's like, this AI stuff, it's a fad, it's going to pass, and I'm just going to let it go by because I'm not going to worry about it. I know I've got, things I say, but I'm really curious from your perspective. I love the depth at which you look at this through. How do you respond to that business owner that's like, this is a passe, this is a fad, and I'm going to just ignore it?
I'll tell you a funny story. When I was very, very early in my Google career, in other words, I had written, this would be like 2003, I had written a PDF book called The Definitive Guide to Google AdWords. And um, and now I was just selling it, and it was this frenzy of affiliates and Google, brand new Google advertisers, and where is the internet going next? And I remember kind of feeling like I'm just this is just like a fad. Like, yeah, I do think this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like the fact that the English language is up for auction and you can write an ad and bid 10 cents, and that's really cool. But like the internet is so ephemeral, like next year it'll be off to something else, and this was just practice for whatever comes next, and just seems like a hamster wheel. I really didn't realize that Google was poised to take over the world.
Hmm.
I really get it.
Yeah.
And when it did happen, like I didn't invest a bunch of money in Google stock in 2005, like I should have. But like at the time, it was like you could only see so far. Like you could only see as far ahead of you as you'd already seen behind you. It was like, I don't know what's
Right.
going to happen in 5 years. I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. Well, I've learned a few things. And what I've learned, honestly, back to the, I've learned that network effect is the most powerful thing in business.
Mm-hmm.
Network effect is why AT&T is still a monopoly. You know, Verizon came out of AT&T, don't you?
Oh yeah.
These communication monopolies last a really long time. And so when Microsoft bought ChatGPT, I bought Microsoft stock. I'm like, yeah, these guys are going to be around. So that's kind of an answer to your question. What do you guys think about all that?
I mean,
Well,
I
I think
love,
your network.
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Frankie.
I was just
No, you
thinking
got it.
the network effect is such a simple way of kind of codifying momentum like that. I've talked to most people don't stick around with something long enough to kind of get that unstoppable momentum, but obviously, I mean, you were I had wish I had listened to you, by the way, just for as a matter of principle. When you were talking about Google Ads when it was 5 cents, I was of the opinion back then it was like it was a fad or it wouldn't last, so I wasn't smart enough to capitalize on all the stuff you were saying. But I'm with you. Like it is like once something reaches momentum, it's almost hard to undo it. And I think we're already there with Chat GPT. I mean, you've seen how many like didn't they set the record after like 4 days of having like a million users or something after, half a week. So I mean, this ain't going anywhere for a while, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, Jonathan.
Yeah.
No, I think you really nailed it with the network effect, Perry. I mean, it's about, in my mind, it's about momentum. And once that momentum gets created, it's virtually impossible to stop that momentum without some sort of catastrophic mistake on the part of, Uber or Lyft, or in this case, ChatGPT or something like that. Because that, I mean, you look at AT&T, we don't even think of them as a company for the most part anymore, especially in the tech world. I mean, who's ever even talked about AT&T, but they're still a global behemoth company because of that exact network effect that you've described, that momentum that they've created. And I think, when it comes to AI, while I'm not ready to call any winners and losers, I agree with exactly what you're saying. This technology we're just, in my mind, at the beginning stages of that. Like you said something earlier that I really was impressed with, and that was that, everybody's basically giving AI too much credit. They're thinking it can do too many things when it really can't. Like you said, I loved how you said that. This is just, it's regurgitating stuff that man has already created, that we've already been there. So nothing new is coming out. Now, has it got great recall? Absolutely. Has it got great memory? Absolutely. So there's some really cool stuff here. But I love how you're saying that. And I think we're just at the beginning of that. And I think it's the prime time for businesses in particular to be looking at how do I use this, bring us right back to where you started. How do we use this to take that niche knowledge that I have, that I know more about than probably anybody else, or at least most other people? And if I can take that and be purposeful about putting that into some sort of custom AI model that the AI now has access to that knowledge base, then I can do amazing things to impact the world around me.
Yeah.
So I think the question is not when is the AI going to become conscious and take over?
Yeah.
The question is who's running it and who's censoring it
Yes.
and who's got their finger on the scales. That's the real question. And one of the cool things about, for years in a lot of markets, you could buy really cheap clicks on Google Ads. And because I was involved in a lot of philosophical discussions and science discussions and religious discussions, I was doing that. And I saw and experienced firsthand how just bidding on a certain keyword and putting a certain message into a marketplace would shift the entire conversation in a marketplace. And so when social media started happening, this had to be 10 years ago. I got a call from a journalist in Europe, and they wanted to do a story on how advertisers are violating everybody's privacy and spying on everybody. And I said, "Oh heavens, like this is a nothing burger issue." I said, "The only thing advertisers are interested in is not advertising to you if you're not buying. Like that's
Hmm.
really all we care about."
Right.
I said, "You know what you should really be concerned about? You should really be concerned about the fact that there's somebody who runs Facebook and somebody who runs Google, and there's people on these editorial policy boards, and they're deciding what people can and can't talk about." Again, I said this 10 years ago. I didn't say this during COVID. I'm talking, 2013 or something. And I said, "You have no idea how easy it is for them to tilt the conversation like towards the Republicans or towards
Hmm.
Yeah.
any way they want just by tweaking a few dials. And there is nobody that has any oversight over this or is making sure that it's any kind of fair." And her editor was not interested in doing that story. I don't know why, but like they had zero interest in having that conversation. They wanted to demonize advertisers and have a thing about how we're violating everybody's privacy and they're, doing stuff with everybody's data. Oh man. And then that thing happens in 2016 with, that scandal about the elections
Oh yeah.
and and like uh no shit, Sherlock. Like, do you expect anything else to happen? Do you have any idea how politics actually works? And so, like, this is the real issue. Every time somebody is talking to you about, oh, the Terminator and the machine is going to take over, that's just a distraction from the fact that there's people in a room in front of screens who are tilting the playing field ideologically, like whichever the way they want. And so, what that means is when you do your network effect for mere mortals, you need to have digital sovereignty. In other words, you need to own your IP and you can't be like sacrificing it at the altar of Microsoft. You don't take your IP and upload it to ChatGPT.
Exactly.
You put your IP in your server under your roof with your
Mm.
RAG, your LLM, and you own it, baby.
Yeah. Can I just say on that before you finish that rant that I've heard you say for 10 years, like have your own damn email list because otherwise, if it's a
Hmm.
community on Facebook or whatever, it's like if you don't control it, like that can disappear overnight. And
Amen.
I don't know if that was hit me as hard as it did 10 years ago, but the longer I do this, the more that becomes true as I see people get accounts banned and lose this. And, this social, you get 3 strikes, your copyright banned forever. And I've seen people lose hundreds of thousands of followers and never built an email list in there and thought it would just be there forever. So, I mean,
I had an email conversation a couple years ago with Jordan Peterson's son, and I told him, you guys need to build an email list because YouTube can yank your audience anytime they want. And they did. I don't know if they did it because they talked to me or not, but it's like, man, you better build an asset that you own. Because if you have an email list, you actually own it.
yeah,
The servers could shut you down or whatever, but at least you know who the people are.
yeah,
So I think people are very distracted from what the real issues actually are. And I think there's a new arms race. If you own a body of work and if you're an expert in a niche and a you have a position and you have a USP and you have a unique point of view. Like, I don't care if you're a brain surgeon or if you're a gardening company or whatever you are. If you have a unique body of knowledge, this is the new. So we've built a Perry bot. We're still using it inside of our company. We're experimenting with it. And it's like, what can we do with this? And how do we create even more unique content with this that people actually want to read? And the litmus test is that people actually want to read that. It still comes down to the
100%. Yeah, 100%.
yeah. And you're still feeding it the right stuff. Perry, I feel like we could keep you forever, but I want to be respectful of your time. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about just kind of tying this all together because you've got your upcoming AI event. It is on the cutting edge, and you've taken great care. I know just from personal conversations we have to have the best of the best, the brightest minds at this stuff. I wonder if you could just share a little bit about, what's inside there, what folks can expect, and anything else you want to share about it.
So we are doing a seminar April 16 to 18 in Chicago, and I'm bringing the smartest people that I know in the entire space. I'm bringing in Sam Woods, who rocked the house a year ago. Nobody knew who he was, and he came on the scene. He's a brilliant AI visionary. We have David Fox, who just turned 30 years old, and I quoted him earlier. And he gave just yesterday, he did a webinar with us, and he did it live without a net, a whole bunch of video and graphic stuff. He'd go to Midjourney and he would say, I want businessmen walking through a forest, and then he would modify it a little, and then he'd throw it into another tool, and then now they're walking in the forest and the trees are going by, and he did all of this in real time without a net. There's also a humanity aspect to this. One of my main speakers is Megan Macedo, and I would not categorize her as an AI expert, but she is a human expert. Megan is what I would describe as the Brene Brown of marketing. I think that AI is going to push a lot of people into an identity crisis because they're going to say, well, I used to think I was a human because I could build a bicycle or because I could write a haiku or because I could play a song on the guitar. And now, like, I don't know, like, it seems like machines could do all of these things and they could write better rap lyrics and better comedy jokes than I can. And so, like, what does it mean to be a human? And so I think this is bringing us full circle around to what the Plato and Socrates and Jesus and Moses and all those people were talking about. I think we are right back to the most original human questions. This is one of the reasons I drew my little picture about the frogs is because we don't listen. If you ask 100 biologists to define life, you will get 100 different answers. And if you ask 1,000, you will get 1,000 different answers. You know why? We don't know what life is. So if we don't know what life is, who the hell is going to tell you that we just made something better? No, they haven't. And like, there's this really, really old pattern of people putting impressive statues in front of people and saying, bow to my God, and like, do this thing that I tell you to do so that the gods will not be angry at you. Do you realize that this is just happening all
Right.
over again?
Hmm.
Does anybody know the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and the story of Daniel in the Old Testament, where he says, "Bow
Absolutely.
to my statue of gold," and like everybody does except these three guys, and they're standing there, right? You know, three guys standing there while everybody is bowing down. They're like, "No, we are not bowing to your fabricated, made-up God. We are in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego right now. Hello. What's old is new, and what's new is old."
Hmm.
Love it. I will just for those of you guys who are interested in checking out Perry's events, I'll put some links below this for you guys and make sure you guys can get access to those. And I'll probably publish this tomorrow just to make sure you guys can actually make it on time because we filmed this a little tight to the deadline, but I'll make sure you guys have access to that. Anything else you want to add, Perry?
Well, I just appreciate you asking these questions. Not every host will give you this long of a leash. And, I really care about this. If there's anything that keeps me up at night, it is the fact that this network effect thing is already going.
Yeah.
I don't, how do you stop ChatGPT if you don't like it? Like when Sam Altman got up in front of
Hmm.
Congress and he was like a whore. He was like, come on, take us. We need Congress's help so that we could be ethical and just figure all this out. And see, you know what that really meant? That meant regulate all of our competitors out of existence, please, and we'll just get in
Exactly.
bed together. That's exactly
Yes.
right. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I don't want to make rude gestures on your video, but like, I'm like, okay, this is not good. Well, listen, you know where we're at is we're in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, where the guy's all depressed and he's wondering if his life is worth anything, and the angel shows up and he shows him, well, you saved your brother from drowning and you kept the bank from going under, and you saved the town from becoming a dystopia called Potterville, and your life is worth something. And then he's all cheery and happy and he hugs his kids and he kisses his wife and he realizes, he has a new zest for life. If you care about good people doing good things in the world, not getting taken over by the bureaucracy and the idiots and the muggles, then get busy. Like, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing.
True story.
And one of the problems with like good people, salt of the earth people, is they're so slow and they're so tradition bound and they're so bound to the principles that they do understand is they don't see history happening right in front of them. Like, dude, like, you got to get involved in this. The internet is as good as you help make it.
Yeah. Well, all right, my man. On that front, I'm going to hit to end recording for our fine folks. We appreciate some quality ideas with some quality rants mixed together. At least I did.
Good
So I hope you
stuff.
guys had as good a time as I did. And
Great show, man. Thank you.
hey guys, if you like this video, you'll probably also like our free Facebook group, Beyond Agency Profits, Agency Lifestyle Design. You can get free copies of the book inside here. I look ridiculous. We're doing weekly Q&As, giving answers to all your questions. Some of the best, smartest, brightest people. We've got lots of industry leaders doing 7, 8 figures and beyond. It's a literal who's who of the brightest agency owners that I know, as well as lots of tips on scaling and stuff, books that work. So if you're not already part of it, you're going to want to be part of it. So make sure to click the link. I put it in the description of the video as well as in the pinned top comment below. So just scroll down and you can join, and it's totally free.